Question. I feel the spaces surrounding herbalism are being infiltrated by a plethora of self-described herbalists. What do you personally do to ensure the information and guidance you are using is from qualified, endorsed, and recognized sources? I have to start this off by saying that I am absolutely a self-described herbalist. I have no formal training of any kind. I've never completed a course on herbalism that assessed my progress in any kind of way. So I am one of those people. Factor that in however you want. Relevant to what you're asking, if I'm looking around at information, like let's say, one of the things that I do when I talk to people is I often find I might say oh, I would consider using this plant, and I might include a link that has information on that plant. And if the plant were, say, mullein, I could link to my write-up on my website about mullein, and that would be good. And if the plant is like yellow dock, and I'm like, oh, I don't have an accessible to anyone document on yellow dock that I can just send to someone, I will, I will think whether someone that I know has one and look around for that. But I might just Google around and be like, does someone have an article on yellow dock that says that, it might be good for soft stool. And so I'll type into Google yellow dock Rumix crispus herbal soft stool and see if anything comes up. And if I find something, I'll read through it. And if I don't know who the person is, I will look at everything that's in the article and be like, what do I think about that article? Do I feel like that covers the bases well, or maybe, not so well? Is there anything in there that I'm like, because that occasionally happens. I don't have to agree with everything, and people can have different opinions from me, but I'll read over the article and see if there's anything that I feel like is like, oh yeah, I can't recommend that because it says that or has that in there. That occasionally happens. And then I'll look and see if I can find an about page on that person's website, try and figure out who they are as I'm reading their website. Because I've done a lot of study over a course of a lot of years, I can tell in a lot of cases, are they writing this article from their personal experience using the plant? Or are they just compiling information from a whole bunch of different sources? So if every sentence says this other person said this and this other person said that and this other person said that, that's not necessarily bad, but I'll want to look through it better and see what it says. If I see a bunch of just stuff, and especially stuff I've not seen before, I kind of think about it in relation to how I know that plant and be like, does that seem reasonable to me? And occasionally I'm like, oh wow, this is brilliant, I really like what this person said about sassafras, because I didn't think of that or say that, and reading that, it makes me think it's really good. So it's just to explore something, maybe see if they say who they studied with, how do they phrase things. One of the things that I look for is a lot of people, when they write about plant, they'll say this plant does this, or this plant does that, or will do this. And I really prefer when people phrase things with this plant can and this plant may, so that things aren't phrased in absolutes. If you take this, it will do this. That sort of denies the uniqueness of the individual people taking it and their experience. So there's just a whole bunch of different ways that I'll pick apart and think. I also might be asked some people that I know, oh, hey, do you know this person? Is there any kind of connections? And there doesn't need to be. The resources don't need to meet all of my criteria, but I do really look things over and try to suss out how I feel about the way that it's conveyed and where it's coming from before I will pass it on to other people, or before I would necessarily quote it in a class or in a write-up or something. I have been known to occasionally contact people and be like, hey, I read this, blah, 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 and ask them some further questions about it. I've done that to other people. Sometimes I call people up on the phone. People don't do that much anymore, but I occasionally still do that. People did that to me. I remember when I was first started posting a lot on herbal email listservs. In particular, Henriette Kress has an herbal email listserv, I think just called the Herbalist. It's still around now, but not well used after the whole Facebook takeover of everything. And I used to have on my emails my phone number. I don't know if that's something I would totally recommend, but I used to have it on there. And one day my phone rang, and I pick up the phone, and I'm like, hello? And this voice says, hi, Jim. It's Michael Moore down in New Mexico. And I was just like, and I would love to tell you that I was like really cool and even keel about it, but I think I was a little bit like, oh my God, Michael Moore is calling me. Holy shit. I think that might have come through a little bit. He was calling me because I was posting stuff, and I think that he wanted to know through talking with me whether I was just good at writing stuff or whether I actually knew stuff and had experience with it. And that's okay. We don't want to be judgmental about people and sizing them up in a you're good or you're bad kind of way, but sort of reaching out to people through various means and connecting with them to get a sense of who they are. To me, that's important. And I always feel like when I look at herbal resources, if I get a sense of someone's personality through the way that they write, as opposed to people who write in a very objective way that gives no sense of their personality, for me personally, I prefer that information about herbs and herbalism is conveyed with a sense of personality. It just clicks better for me.